Coming up in the next countdown LBL. Coming up next video, title, next video. Description, skip to this video now. Transcript for American activist speaks out on refugee crisis. It's not just another child in Syria. Hey everybody, I'm on in the Welcome to Uncomfortable. The goal here is to have honest and unflinching conversations about some of the things that seem to divide us right now as American from the big ideas we're talking about. So today I'm really excited to say that Lenore Polly is here and joining us from the Syrian American Council. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for having. So one of the things Alec asked people to do is to sort of tell us about their child and how they grew up, what was important to them. It helps us understand it's not just what you believe but why you believe what you do. To go for it. So my parents immigrated from Syria, from Damascus, about 50 years ago, and they ended up in Washington, D.C. and ended up in Arizona at some point, and Ask For It was born, so I regret most in my life in Arizona. I tried to. In the beginning as a child I wanted to be a full all-American girl. And so I would I was really embarrassed, and I was try aboard must slums. I would tell my friends no I'm way at I don't talking. Arabic would not. But as I got older I got warm and comfortable becoming, and that thereby it strengthened. And by way on September 9th grade, Munger, my God, telling me after September that this is such thing in American. Now, it's going to be very hard for you. Parents, you should look at tied to meet them there. And with, because this is time for higher than with. And so that was this moment where I had an identity crisis, where I grew up thinking I'm this all-American girl. My older brother served in the military. We live such an American life. It's some cultural differences that may no boyfriends. At this point where it's to find people that are like you, because it's before that though. Growing what were most if your way where any of them. The community by and in the alley from your gas elementary school yet. Still I was the only mountain Aaron and of Arab descent, and in my grade the wife ran Mexican it's. Yet but it was high school was really states me and the things that Q and who like. How my rights and if he. So without one of the first times that almost fascinated by how parents choose to it or not to address those kinds of things with their kids. Could some parents think I don't want to make it the thing look, so we're not gonna talk about it, and some parents like it sounds. Think your dad make a decision to say we need to talk about that, he need to be aware it. Did it surprise you that he did that, or had they always been like? It was a complete surprise. He has so many American friends, important reason America, no roots elsewhere. So we grew up that way, and so when he said that, that was the first time where I was like, wow. I was just shocked. I didn't know what to say, and it wasn't he didn't say like don't be friends with your friends, but just be cautious because they might treat you different now because they're looking at you as somebody who's from that region of one of the largest terrorist attack that happened. Counseling. So people are gonna treat you differently and expect, and just be kind, but just now like Earth. People who are gonna fully accept you're going to be people who works for insisting suffering as you did in the backlash and in the US. And did they treat it badly? Now I didn't have. I had a couple abundance, but not to Linens, frequently casual kind of off the cuff remarks at the I remember one year's one students. We were joking around, and he crossed the line, and he needed joke like you can't make a joke with me because you're Aaron. He did as a joke. But it was so much steeper than, and I was like, what you mean by that? Because I'm Aaron, I can joke with the music, And I was like, no I don't, and it ends up becoming the state's big issue. And it the heck mean really hard because I was late. Don't see the difference, like I grew up in this country as well. So it's fishy at that 9th grade. You're really starting to come into your identity, right? You're starting to figure who aren't things that are important to you. Did it affect? Sounds like at least in high school. And you're lucky he didn't have more issues or incidents like that at when that college on yearly professionally with. Did you ever come across any of that, and it bigotry ever? Or her pushback your father prepares you for now? Not all on the end. I actually had the opposite reactions, so I ended up going from as a child I told you where I rejected penis, this having group some of being Arab and must onion too. This horrible incidents that made me go wow, this is who I am. As I am a mix of beautifully between Arabs, American, and so especially college by a really tuck courses. And eyes soft. I looked after Fred. I looked for friends that worked were like me, and we had all these different communities like you Lebanese hearing and Saudi, and we would always get together and half of the time, but I'm curious thing you think friends like you get up until the point where your father pointed out to you thought all your friends from Tokyo re-evaluate just like and that is that cue what parts in view? Were you tapping into there when you should developing more Arab or Muslim friends or any of that way? What was that all what parts of them were speaking to? Parts of mean was it shared and me experience says or cultural traditions are because even across a lot of people you mention a lot of the cultural traditions are very different. Ryan Reynolds out petitions are very different. Dietary conditions are very different from Pakistani traditions. All of so Powell it's perfect. He found a community right with what he think it was. What did you enjoy about being? I think it's that feeling. You're not here, you're comfortable here or not can be Jack who you get each other's jokes, you look the same, you share the same kind of restrictions and the sin foods and the same enjoyment, some pleasure in seeing. Music. Yes, so it connected me to them and college what I really enjoyed was starting back and learning Arabic. Sites are taking courses and parents don't speak it as so that was the thing actually drove my 20s so I chose not to speak and I would always speak English and my parents would speak to an Arabic and it forced me go to Arabic school or Muslim yes well and I would push away I was saying no at this isn't for me but again in college it was this light bulb where I really want to take pride in and in my family's roots. And I realized that, for me my feeling is very small it's just us in Arizona. So I have this loneliness. And I would visit my grandma every now and then couldn't but it was very rare site result agreement in Damascus and she's still there. So I saw her like 3 or 4 times in my life and in college I realized. When I call her I don't even know how to talk to her. I don't even know how to say why I love you I just know 34 were heard step her and that's pretty much all the conversation I had with this woman who. And there was a part of me that really her and I felt like I was missing such an opportunity to know my heritage my roots and so acted upon myself like this that's learn Arabic. And I actually Texans on the courses which were really interesting like women and slab was when my courses I really enjoyed he and I learned from more of an academic standpoint where as a kid it was always talk like one and on she's teaches. You and way in LA Basin they make up all the way we do it immediately do it yes there was no basis to what they tell you where it's short-sleeved tee shipments like Ellie you're going to tell. It is Beckham famine and they would just make it happen they would hear it from their parents and their 7 and make it up so when I went to school and actually learn about from the historical standpoint from the academic. It really opened again and it mean me where to begin history to act to learning about it from my professors and it's so beautiful. There's so many things are really beautiful when Eastwood need to study. Did you find things in new academic study that contradicted things you learned? Like oh no we don't need to do it that way because actually says or was it just strengthening everything now is buried? Continued till very different way of. I've land is found again. One of my friends actually uses House General Dictionary. And she takes each word from verses of the on me and says what is this word mean 1,000 years ago? And she says, what are we understand it today? And how it's supposed to be interpreted is world of difference. And so I think that was a beauty in college is what I realized just how Arabic and howl. It's just some rich language and so it that ability for somebody to translated. And for people to misunderstood as I understand it we use as Hugh Popes and soul. Yet in it got me closer against the religion and I'm not off a 100%. Unless I'm very spiritual leader but they really did open my eyes to this experience going through I find it so interesting that you weren't taking yourself through this sort of like self-exploration and deeper understanding at the same time. The rest of the country is really paying a lot more attention to the part of the world your family comes from them and their religion lets you Tammy here's too and all of those things that sort of like their scrutiny from the outside that you are also self-scrutinizing about it right and where did that take you mean I'm curious how prior to that when people and ask for your family with spamming you would say Syria what did that mean to people before the revolution's pat and most of a serialized then there's the people who it's an ID say Egypt and they didn't understand because their chairman is a song you walk like an Egyptian. And the cell, but yet most people didn't know where cereal it's where cereal yeah especially an diet. It's killing people we need people acting in spring you explain to people. Taxes just like it wasn't a thing knots and Italy's then. And it depends what time. I was out because obviously before September 11th different story after that. Up. And hotter restrict yourself. Because, I think it's really important to understand who you're talking to you and sci-fi. Have some understanding whereas I don't want to get people too uncomfortable with some people I'm the first heir. Or efforts must. So it's you want to walk people slowly like I'm just like you were and endlessly. As I've seen you're actively thinking about yes you engage with people to make sure they are still comfortable rightly you're presenting a scores. And no it's not I think it's up I think it's actually a really wonderful. To be two from two parts of the world. I think it's a way that makes me I'm in this space where an evil hue. Understand, American, and I'm able to someone understand. But it makes me, makes me suffer for who I am. So I'm happy. Even though it might sound on actually think. When you tell people now, in late 70s that Japan and here what does that mean people like Kerry and the Congress? Again it depends where is, in New York with the friends. And it was a friend of a friend and I sent my concerns and he says others weren't. And since they break it is. Yet this is the worst humanitarian crisis and patient you not hear about the war. And but I mean just again it depends where it's a lot of those absents. And even Nazis. Yes I'm really happy that people understand. Feed the tragedies people. I don't want my home country, to be a place where it's just sad that it only represents patents mean it is such a beautiful country with so much history. And for people just say I'm sorry. When it's really sad. It's really sad. Response like Eds. Went to Q you can some work resettling refugee problem in your hands in the bears as well. When did that start to be of importance to you? To do that kind of gas I'm gonna go back to college. In college when district in the courses realized but you still strong and really start that relationship with my grandma. I apply for a scholarship to study Arabic University I was selected as 140 students from around the world through Torch does. Other exits at the programs that Georgetown has. They have 4 seats at the current university programs and that until yet. So ended living in for 3 years. Island Arabic but my first year that it was different. Urban program I was slightly permanently as much herb like cats and when he and I'm the Metsi area and many live with Anchor Dan I found some non-profits and wanted to work for in Syria and that was my soul. The programs from 2010 sat. Had to sell. I was in Doha, watching parents and on offers to each, and I was like praying it would come here and then there's no chance I would go to Syria and my parents would like don't ever talk about politics you can't talk about that the regime and whatever you do like you people are so scared. So there's no way they're aware of that yet I was part of your upbringing yet this is the century every night Kenya. Every time I go to Syria as early as 6 years. When they see you. My parents were very strict about it saying, if you ever getting cap and they ask you what you think the Sharon said don't say. And Nuzina I was a very social little girls I would talk to everybody and hate it. Then sell there relate to please like whatever you do get in the cab don't talk to them about anything askew it how's the weather you look the other way. She never asked them about that when you are outside of Syria then did you ever follow up why can't we talk about that through? To be honest I just thought it was just really weird at least the way it is I just Syria was like a different planet for me as a cat it was like in the beginning again ident like it was a place that was really loud they smoked. Not granted it yet everyone speaks this weird lingo in Arabic and ident like it but every single time I'd go back and that was their sporadic. Technically this is the most beautiful country and I fell more and more with. So and I got that's caution. I was like I'm for sure gonna go back to Syria it is. That's the streets of Damascus like how old I can just. Do the smell of the threat cooking that the smell of that the spices in the market that the how would genuine people argue you don't get that anywhere in the world. I was like that's it I'm calling for share and then you're watching and can't spread the and what do you think? And lions. Being into Hob cause I was closely working with urgency at doing some research with them. Seeing it and having all my friends be and in the media as journalists covering it. It was both exciting and scary as well some of my friends would go to Egypt cover him they talk about getting Pedersen hunting. But at no I thought it was inspiring but at no point tonight in the early stages of the Arab Spring that I can come Nasiriyah. I've talked to my parents simply can you match in this coming this year that no way and that's no way yet. And then when the conflict started when the uprising began in England. A side started cracking down harder and harder what were you thinking? Load it happened. I was there, for a little vacation to seeing my gram and they said the first there was like some protests that were happening inside Damascus in number 15 something like, and I was actually, it's time I was there. And then we were told that all the people who are purchasing up and they cracked down and it's act. So I went back to, and then a few weeks later as Miami. The few weeks later was their spring and started March 15th. So we watched, so carefully through. And I was panic, because I was planning a trip to see my gram in my hand for her birthday at offers. So I was just watching intensely. Ample one was when environment where I think it wasn't a march where the President Bush and has that gay Ellen was like, that these people that are protesting it's and witnesses a joke and working to be more money and Long Island 6 he had. And obviously that was really, that was such, and that was the point where I was like, this can account. People are not that stupid to follow such, speeches or senators, it was empty words basically. Regardless, I ended up going to Syria for the last time, and it was April 1st. For about 2 weeks into opulent, and that was the last women visited, and then it's really sad, it's really sad that my other grandmother passed away just a couple months ago, and we know it doesn't know it could very helping them bury her in Damascus, because we can't and took a country. The agents in the last 60 years now. How do you process patent nailing? You have real memories in those streets, you have real people you can put on the ground in some of those places. How do you watch what's unfolding on television screens and on your phone? And could you reconcile hurricane? I can't. I wake up every morning with pictures that does touch in my from. In the beginning you tried to, you don't want to believe. And you distance yourself. And it's better just to hear the numbers, not seen the face. Because that he's there. But when you hear like this is somebody who's, mother past children past, he hits closer who, because your life act could have been somebody acts of in my got more and more intense. And I think this what was the turning point actually for me of when I went from listening to the news about Syria and really just listening it's anybody way to actively working on Syria was I ended up moving to the violence. I lived in Dubai and ended up in doing a campaign that to raise money for the white helmets, the women rescue workers, and allowed. So I told my donors, if you give me 151,000 to buy this ambulance for these heroes essentially. In return I climbed Kilimanjaro. So we ended up doing it. This was to one the 14th when he 15,100. And by I climbed Kilimanjaro and honor the way comments. And that it's higher experience of crime in the mountain. It's such the mountain is physically exhausting. But what's even harder is the mental challenge. The end every time I bought my body wanted to, but of course, but my mind was dictating what I did and didn't do. So my mind would say okay I want a quick clip, and then I was like, I'm doing this, had a choice. But they're the people of my parents might at the homeland, are fleeing violence with no choice. It's about was literally what punishment the top. Thinking about women and children to flee them that are running with and I was well prepared with Kieran and Porter isn't it had not. But those people don't. You see people that were fleeing the border with a bag, with everything that they can fit in that bag and barely any food and water and crossing for hopefully about life. Let's look at it. The ministry pokey done. I'd a QE at this point earlier, but you have helped to resettle. Right, some refugees in your home state of Arizona come. What if that process, like what is it like when? And when a failing arrives here? As you say, they have nothing but the things that they can carry. And her in a completely foreign land with absolutely no roots or face where context or more certainty. Them in their future, what is your role? What is that like for them and what you can? And so, it's to be a refugee is probably the loop one of the hardest things you can experience. I mean, these people aren't being uprooted from their homes to a foreign country where they don't speak the language. So, I think one of the most important things for her, to help refugees, socially Syrian refugees, is, the community, the Syrian community. Arizona wanted to give many things, they are ready to give them furniture and clothes and stuff, and we did this huge holiday drive where with touch 6,000 lives of people that wanted to donate to do, which is great, and the holiday program there is this one. Syrian refugees from Hunts, and a fan this for this American family came to the home to them all these Katzenberg. And they do a TV and some Xbox to their children and they gave them and all the things that material that they needed here, materialistic things. And the guy sat, and I will never forget he's, you might have given me $1,000 worth of things and I'm so grateful for it. But the most expensive thing that you gave me tonight was your friendship. Because it's tomorrow that these things compares, these things can be destroyed in roads, and put my friendship, our relationship to something that you can never take away from me. Norris nodded, dry eye in the room because it was so powerful. And I think that is the most at AEK Athens has when you start living for this, the space of like giving and being, really investing in relationships. And not buying the things, not living in this materialistic world, really like investing in people who I think you experience such joy, and I think that's what we got, that whole experience for the holiday trip. That's what people felt, the group, it was not, they brought presidents in April, these things, to these Syrian refugee families every weekend, but it was the most reckless thing to see. People just building Richardson, hugging and not speaking a word of the same language, but a hug translates here, smile transcends any language or any bear. When, still there are so many others who have never come into contact, will never come into contact with. Refugee fan me, don't know what that experience is like, and then you hear the way the conversation windows brand on the national level. So we have a president, an administration, that is basically called, she refugees, a potential Trojan horse, might that there's a national securities link, right? We've explicitly attempted to ban, and specifically Syrian refugees, right, indefinitely from entering. When it becomes a kind of a political football like that, how you Patty changed the conversation, because that everyone has an aching right, very strong one, about this, right? Think what it should be our responsibility as Americans is go meet a huge. Let's take the time to go meet them, see what their life and meet their children, just hear from them. Because I think that they were making something sound so scary, because we don't now. And a lot of the people that were in this holiday drive that we had, a lot of Americans who have no experience with ever meeting Syrian him when he met, and they were like them so much like math. Loudly he and other stories of what they had to go through. It was something I can't even found them done. And I think that broke down this barrier, of what? The scary Syrian refugees on the idea of it, but once you see these, 3-year-old kids laughing and playing with toys. You can't think of anything out. But there is that it. As created, it would be probably logistically impossible, right? How many millions of people who may hold these views or hold those fears actually have a chance to meet someone face to face? And at the heart of all of this, we were talking about refugees. And a lot of your complete immigration and refugees, and we have to understand refugee status is a very specific thing, highly vetted. The most vetted of our folks who gets it in terror America, but that moral obligation's what we're talking about for people who don't think America has that moral application. Where do you begin with them? I think it's important for them to really dig deep within themselves and ask themselves, what are the things they want as a human? And they want the basic things, they want to feed their families, they want to have children, they want that, make sure they have live in a safe home. And when they ask themselves these things, they have to realize that they're people elsewhere in the world, like, first of all, your neighbor wants same thing, right? So okay, so then you go from neighbor, the next state wants the same thing, right? So then why is that any different than the next country over? And then the next country over, and then you look at the world, like every human on this planet wants the same thing for their family. And I think that's the part where people meet to look at. And they may feed and say that may be willing, but why is it my responsibility to use our tax dollars, to use our resources, our energy, potentially compromise our safety, even as absent a statistical evidence and any about a half? But when that argument is made, there's thing, this sort of the compassion there, your different degree in this conversation. How do you break through it? Because that's what's at stake, right, of course. As much as I for those people back that cannot see it. And they lacked compassion, empathy for what these people have gone through. What I tell them is that if you hate, you don't open your doors of these people, and these people are neglected in other countries. Unfortunately, when you don't give people opportunities. And you're talking about a child who lost his parents. And he's in the middle of, a neighboring country of Syria, and he lost everything he has. No way to get an education, no future potential getting a job board. Tammy, that child is, so much more likely, to be vulnerable to, let's say, a group, a terrorist organization says Kong will give you all the security that you need. Using it's actually in our national security. It comes, you want to help, of course. Bring these children, to give them home, let them feel love, let them feel that that what America's values are. Because once the war ends in Syria, every single Sunday Syrian refugee wants to go back to their country. Every single one I've talked to have said, I love America, I have loved what this country has done. American people are in the nicest people, American people are so in the nicest people, we've government but we want to go back to our home. Let's list of it for second, because if you come to a place where you are welcomed, and you'd make a life easy hack to right if the circumstances demand, you just happen to you find a way to earn a living, you get your kids in school, you make a community rights human beings to we do look, we make it work wherever we are. Who knows what's gonna happen on the ground? In theory at this point, there's no clear policy from any of the interested and involved parties. We don't know when that comparable, and I think what scares a lot of people here, for those who are prone to those kind of fears, is that why would anyone leave here when you have a good life here, tenure here? That temporary status argument doesn't really resonate right here, yet we're talking about making people. Americans are talking about bringing them in and creating a home for them, minds already seated. What I say to these two, I want to believe it is, let them dig a little bit further back to their ancestry, and it can. And we all came from threatening to Americans. And that's what's beautiful, America, we have such rich diapers in speech, and that is what you need us so powerful. You know that somebody from a foreign land can come into this country in the compasses and build something that helps the country becomes either. That's a beautiful thing, and why would take away from other people? What do you think America should be doing when it comes to earn our involvement as a country's there? Terms as refugees in terms of our policy now, Billy. Refugees, and we need to really focus on changing the way we speak. You know I can use them from leaders, and you know we need to. It hurts us when we close the doors on nations. It really doesn't mean that's extremely. I'm scared when that happened, because people could retaliate. You know it's people who want to exploit those kinds that Asians anyway dry, so I think that we need to change the way that we are speaking about the most vulnerable people. You know that is so important, and you can come from the top there, and when he hear errant leaders say, you know we welcome those that want to come at needs that are the most liberal people in the world. You know we have the right programs. Well, you know it's the way it's the way you say, you know, again, like said the refugees. Program is one of the most vetted and programs that you know that's out there, and it's 1 to 2 year process. So yeah, I mean just being a little bit more gentle birth to those people who literally seen house. In terms of our policy, I mean, do you agree with it? This isn't it to launch airstrikes. It's then 6 almost 7 years where Russian assets has dropped barrel bombs, has dropped landmines, has dropped phosphorus in a chlorine, searing gas, and has killed more than half knowing people. You know, and this is the first time that any nation has even slapped his hand for doing. I think it's to send a very, very strong message. It was small, but it was very, very harmful indeed. President Obama should have done more. Of course, what would you like to see? 2014, I think he should. He demeanor he said the red line, everyone held him accountable, that I hadn't, he pulled away, and I understand that it might be some circumstances that we're unaware of on the how complicated it is, but I mean if Obama has an Obama, just a topped one, you know there's air bass. Just like Trump did, I think it would have changed the complete situation on the ground from then to now. You know, from then it's became one of the worst refugee crises since the Cold War, and it's only getting worse. Do you think that we should launch more strikes? Do you think that we should become more militarily involved? We're attacking ICE, you know. So that's not even a question, I think. But unfortunately I says so. In essence, work to get. So why is it even a question? When we think about attacking them, you know, if you look at the numbers, statistically speaking, 500,000 people have been killed in this war. Around 90% of the killings have been from acid, have been from barrel bombs. So yeah, what we did when we attacks that the air base in Syria who want to 9-acre airstrikes was only 1/10, and air bases in Syria who 1/10, and the next day there a few airplanes that took off from it. So you know, I mean, if you really are concerned about refugee crisis and you're concerned about security, national security in the future, then it's really important that you have people feel safe on their own country. You know, and then again, most their attacks are from the sky, so get rid of an option. You know, let's get rid of all their air bases, so they can't drop bombs on children. EU and end your attic. If you work in your work to grow awareness, you're active in Tanzania, Kenya as well. How ill, and especially in this teenage, because the conversations can happen so quickly and take on different tones very quickly as well. What is that like? What kind of conversations do you have with people there if you try to engage them? Oh man, yeah, some people hired. You know it's really interesting when you do share stuff. I've got people that we share my things that I wouldn't have thought. Well, that's to me as I feel like I mean the difference. If someone looked at my knees, feet and saw a story that touched them, and they shared it and they touched more lives, even that's one person, I feel like I did something. You know, and it's hard for like we talked, it's hard from Italy every morning looking at my phone and looking at what's happened, seeing pictures of children. And I think a lot of activists feel like what we do. We're sitting in this country where I'm so lucky. I wake up every morning, it is safe he's. I can open the fridge full of food without electricity running 24/7 and running water. I feel guilty. So the fact that yes, I can post something that can spread awareness back and at least get one person that they like Utley. He can of the what's happening in theory is a tragedy and at least, give some kind of spotlight to the child that lost their lives. I think Pats, and how do you make sure people to Oakland on too? Because takes years, as long as you well know it's a long time, and eventually people get so used, it sounds so cynical to say, but children end in one place for his children in another, and for people who don't have contact, someone there have it. At least have a tough time humanizing the rent what's happening on the ground. Do you make sure people don't just grow kind of numb to it? It's hard because even hearing activists and Americans across the nation are currently, and it's only you. It's only not natural, right? Because it's I can't wake up every morning cry. I have to get up, I have to go to work, and I have to get on with my day. I think what's really important is to have a reality check. For me it's like, this just happened, what does this mean? And I think it comes from can't just being aware that okay, there is 100 people who were killed in a massacre and intimate. There was an airstrike, and what does that mean? How would I feel? It was my brother, sister, mother, father passed away. And so for that awareness and drives meets to move, continue to work. But in terms and other people, I think it's always important when you put out messages, this is to show that like how important it is, and show them that it's not just another child in Syria, that child's was he lets it only on inductees, or that's in parody, putting a face to a face to the people who lost. I think that's really important. You call yourself an activist, Terry. Activists, what are you working towards? What do you want to see happening? Alone Syrian activists. I like to say that it helped sink activist is what I do is really nothing compared to it lets in my friends at the when you're talking about women and men who are responding to suit some of the worst tragedies in massacres you ever heard, that they're here. They're absolute heroes. What I am doing is just amplify the story on the ground. To what was it like to see happen, Nolan? What I like to see happen. Me as Lena, I'd like to see people in America to understand what's going on here, and to have more sympathy. That's what I want, to raise awareness for what's going on there. And I take everything opportunities that and it's me completely, like he couldn't just like toll on the person acting and socialize them, police socially awkward, and I go, I really like if this does consume you. I'm especially this summer, and allow Apple Fall in Atlanta felt like people like hell, and I'm like a lake. It was mine, it was cutting go out. My friend wanted to go out to borrow her, it wanted to go out, for dinner, and I just, because the conversation I just on what's up with one of my friends, she told me, what, Satan, my friend, and she told me, and that she was stuck in her home. That barrel bombs and missed files were going off every few seconds, and the building next to her demolished. And there are still people inside the rubble that are screaming for help, and they can hear the sounds of children and then screaming. And there's no one. And that to me haunting me for weeks. Because every time I try to close my eyes, I heard those found. Why I heard what she heard. Because I was like, it is. Do you think that's fair? Do you think it's fair that I got this wonderful opportunity that was without me doing anything? I did not do anything to be born in America. Just like just small wasnt, we have no control of where we're going to be born, or who are born to, or who we are. And the same thing with those people on Syria, they didn't choose. And I'm so I guess for me, and it hits closer to home because again my dad was taking a train in the past, his friends that really were point to America, and 50 years ago on his like, okay, hungry, he'll get a green card, and he came to America, I'm dollars in his pocket, and give a successful businessman. And I was born here, it's like on an American passport. But again it wasn't for that one particular moment in history. My life would be completely different. So there's a sense of, yes, I feel lucky and I'm happy to be in this country and to say, but then there's this part of me that's the guilt. And I feel like every opportunity that I have, that I'm blessed enough hits and feel safe and in this nation, is that I should help others that don't, that aren't so. That don't have, every time a plane passes by we don't think twice. But for them it's like, okay, that's whenever a 16 in the common and potentially destroy your home, and so I think that's really important. For me, just every day that I live here, every day that I am live here, not only in the US but here on the planet, that you make dip on a difference. Whatever it mean. Erica only snagged her hats. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your story with me, of course, and Kim. Thank you for listening to Uncomfortable. Each of our episode is now available on the Unionet and in as a free mobile audio app available across iOS, Android, and Windows. Download it for free today and listen to the latest episode of Uncomfortable 5 days before they're released. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, That Your Hand, and tbcnews.com. And if you like we're doing, take a minute. Leaders are reading and quick preview helps others to find these conversations, and we really just want to hear what you think. Plus, we have made it easy. Just click on the link in the description at this. And if you have an idea for a show topic or a guest, please it, and there are heapers you can tweet asking them, not just that and IZ and IFT, and or use our hashtag #HimUncomfortable. I'm comfortable with the product to feed any. New episodes coast every 2 weeks on Tuesday morning, and don't forget episodes are released 5 feet early on the TuneIn app. And an aside, thanks for listening. This transcript has been automatically generated and may not be 100% accurate.